Historians often say that without America entering the Second World War, Britain might not have survived. That turning point began with the attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. On December 7th, 1941, Japan's surprise strike left the US Pacific Fleet devastated. The very next day, America declared war on Japan. In Washington, President Roosevelt delivered his famous address, calling it a date which will live in infamy, a speech that rallied the nation from shock to resolve in a matter of minutes. 4 days later, on December 11th, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy declared war on the United States, and Congress swiftly responded in kind. What began at Pearl Harbor pulled America fully into the global conflict, standing alongside Britain. Since moving from England to America, I've seen some incredible places, but Pearl Harbor really stands out. Back home, we do learn about it, but mostly as a side note. Our focus is on things like the Blitz, Dunkirk, and the Battle of Britain. Here in America, this is the story. So today I'm sharing my visit and what it felt like to experience it through English eyes. Pearl Harbor is on the island of Oahu, about half an hour from Waikiki. On that morning of December 7th, just before 8 a.m., waves of Japanese aircraft launched a surprise attack. In under 2 hours, more than 2,400 Americans were killed, 1,178 wounded, 21 US ships were sunk or damaged, including 8 battleships, and 188 aircraft were destroyed. The Pacific Fleet was crippled. It wasn't just an attack, it was devastation on a scale the country had never experienced before. To put that morning into human terms, many sailors were still at breakfast or sleeping. Some were raising the flag for morning colours when the first bombs fell. Anti-aircraft gunners sprinted to their stations, some firing back with little training or ammunition, and acts of quick thinking saved lives. Tugboats pushing burning ships clear, medics turning mess halls into emergency wards. The USS Nevada tried to steam out under fire. Other crews fought to keep ships afloat or beach them to prevent sinking. It was chaos, courage, and tragedy all at once. The shock wasn't limited to the bases. On Oahu, civilians suddenly entered a wartime world. Blackouts, curfews, barbed wire strung across beaches, roadblocks, and air raid drills becoming part of daily life. The fear of a follow-on invasion was very real. The territory was placed under martial law, and for families across the islands, the war was no longer something happening over there. It was at their doorstep. As someone from the UK, standing here made me think of home. Britain had already been fighting for over 2 years. Our cities were being bombed, families were living with rationing, and the war felt never ending. America's entry after Pearl Harbor brought the industrial power, manpower, and resources that Britain desperately needed. When news reached London, Prime Minister Winston Churchill wrote that he slept the sleep of the saved and thankful. It was not relief at the attack itself, it was relief that Britain would no longer have to stand alone against Hitler. America was now fully in the fight, and the alliance that followed changed the trajectory of the war and ultimately the fate of both our countries. The first thing you notice when you visit Pearl Harbor is the silence. It's not flashy or loud, it's about respect. The visitor center gives the context with exhibits and film, and then you take a boat to the USS Arizona Memorial, which sits directly above the sunken battleship. It's incredibly profound. 1,177 sailors and Marines were lost on the Arizona alone. More than 900 remain entombed in the ship. You see their names engraved in marble, and even now, oil slowly rises to the surface. People call it the Tears of the Arizona or Black Tears. So why is oil still leaking and why hasn't it been fixed? The Arizona had been topped up with fuel shortly before the attack, and experts believe around 500,000 gallons still remain sealed inside its tanks and compartments. Today, only small amounts escape, just a few quarts a day, enough just to create that rainbow sheen drifting across the water. It hasn't been pumped out for 2 reasons. First, the wreck is a war grave, the final resting place for those who died, and disturbing it would dishonor them. Second, the ship is structurally fragile. After more than 80 years underwater, trying to cut into it could cause the whole structure to collapse and even release much more oil. Because of that, the Navy and National Park Service monitor the site closely and protect it as both a war grave and a fragile historic structure, rather than remove, treating the site as both sacred and environmentally sensitive. Those faint, constant ripples of oil are a visual reminder that the past is still with us. Some people say that visiting Pearl Harbor feels a bit like walking the wartime tunnels in Dover or standing in Churchill's war rooms, history held in place, preserved so that generations can understand what was at stake. For me, it wasn't just a history lesson, it was a reminder of the bond between my home country and my new one. What happened here didn't just change America's story, it altered Britain's fate and the direction of the entire war. When the United States entered the conflict, it gave Britain the ally it had been waiting for. From that point on, our two nations stood shoulder to shoulder, fighting together, planning together, and ultimately helping to shape the outcome of the war. If you're planning a trip to Oahu, this is a must see. Hawaii is stunning, beaches, volcanoes, waterfalls, but Pearl Harbor is what ties the island to the wider world. I mentioned it in my top 5 Oahu video, but it deserves its own moment to truly honor the significance and the respect that this place commands. And for me, that significance goes beyond history books. Standing there, you feel the weight of the loss, but also deep respect for those who gave everything and for the unity that grew out of such tragedy. So while Hawaii is full of natural beauty and unforgettable adventures, Pearl Harbor is the place that stays with you. It's humbling, it's moving, and it's a reminder that some places don't just show us the past, they help us to understand why the present looks the way it does. So if you're planning a visit, I'd suggest setting aside a good few hours for Pearl Harbor. There's more than just the Arizona Memorial. There are museums, exhibits, and 2 other historic vessels that really bring the story of the Pacific War to life. The USS Missouri is docked here, the battleship where the Japanese signed the formal surrender that ended the Second World War. Walking its decks, you're literally standing in the place where the war came to a close. Then there's the USS Bowfin, a World War II submarine. You can actually climb inside. It's narrow, packed with bunks, valves, and torpedo tubes, and it really makes you appreciate what life was like for the crews who fought beneath the waves in the Pacific. Together, these sites make Pearl Harbor not just a single memorial, but a whole experience, one that gives you the emotion of remembrance and also a vivid picture of the larger Pacific conflict that reshaped the world.